So then the Ecoscheme, I'll hand you over to David.
Okay, thanks, Mary, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And just before I get started into this, I know there's a number of questions coming in, maybe people that joined late. So all the presentations, as Mary would have said at the start, they are going to be, we'll put them up on the website later, so they'll be available for everyone. So there's no need for people to be taking photos or notes or one thing or another. And equally so, the recordings will be put up. So just to put people's mind to rest. Okay, so Ecoscheme. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just going through Ecoschemes pretty briefly. So the Ecoscheme itself, so it's effectively an annual agri-environment scheme that rewards farmers for undertaking actions that are beneficial to the climate, to biodiversity, water quality and the environment. So the Ecoscheme themselves, it's a requirement that every member state has one per Article 31 of Regulation 2021-2115. So while it's mandatory for the member state, it's voluntary for farmers whether they want to participate or not. So the Ecoscheme, the application process is online and it's integrated with the BISS. So in exactly what Mary has just went through a few moments, when you as a farmer or if you have an FAS advisor acting on your behalf, as they're completing your BISS application, they'll be going through your ANC, CRISS and equally your Ecoscheme. So in terms of the payments, which is obviously an important part, so it's intended they will issue to farmers annually and a very similar time frame to what would have been there for BISS, so late October and then the balance in December. So eligibility, so all active farmers are eligible to apply once they make the commitments to observe the agricultural practices that I'll go through now in a few moments. So farmers can opt in and out on an annual basis if they so wish. So if, for argument's sake, I was a farmer, I could decide to apply in 23, not apply in 24, come back in 25, etc. And even in the ag practices I select, if I select ag practices in a particular year, I can change ag practices the following year, or alternatively, I can stick with the ones that I've chosen. So every farmer must successfully deliver 2 agricultural practices to qualify for an Ecoscheme payment rate. An important distinction here in the Ecoscheme too is it is not linked to payment entitlements. So if I were a farmer, for argument's sake, and for whatever reason I had no entitlements, but I have 10 hectares of land or 10 hectares of ground, once I come into the Ecoscheme, carry out the 2 agricultural practices that I committed to do, then I'm perfectly entitled to receive an Ecoscheme payment independent of entitlements. So whether I had 10 hectares with no entitlements or 10 hectares with, for argument's sake, 2 entitlements, I can still receive 10 Ecoscheme payments. So the payment rate is likely to be in the range of 60 to 65 euros per hectare, and the reason we're putting a range is it does depend on uptake, so how many farmers actually commit to applying for the scheme, because it is a voluntary scheme. Okay, Billy, next slide there, please. Okay, so in terms of the agricultural practice, so there's 8 agricultural practices and farmers are required to select and complete 2 of these. Okay, within the 8 there are 3 enhanced options. So the first one is agricultural practice 1, which is space for nature, but within that, if a farmer commits to meeting 7%, it's one of their 2 actions, but if they're more than 10%, then that's 2 of their actions. Equally so in extensive livestock, there is 2 actions, and I'll go through them in a moment, and equally so for agricultural practice 4, which is tree planting. So very important, the criteria for each agricultural practice, while we'll obviously go through it here now tonight, I'll go through it tonight pretty briefly. All of the detail is set out in the terms and conditions of the BISS terms and conditions from pages 16 to 31. So it's really important that you do take the opportunity to review them before you apply for the scheme. Okay, Billy, if you wouldn't mind moving on there, please. So then agricultural practice 1. So agricultural practice 1, there's been lots written about this obviously over the last number of weeks and months, but this is probably the big one for a big cohort of farmers. So this is space for nature, and effectively this is where we're trying to reward farmers for the features that they already have on their land, or in some cases where they're maybe short of a bit of ground or a few hedges for features that they put in place. So whether that's they go out and they plant a new hedge, or they plant some trees, or they set aside a bit of ground. So if a farmer is over 7%, that counts as one of the Ecoscheme measures, and if they're over 10%. So last September, we would have provided indicative estimates just before the ploughing, indicative estimates to all farmers. So this is where the department went over the last 12 to 18 months, went and mapped all features on holding. So hedges, stone walls, drains, copse of trees, scrub, etc. And we would have attached a weighting to them, and that would have given a farmer a percentage space for nature. So that's been available to farmers to review themselves since September of last year. And now when you go into your BISS application, you're going to see the particular percentage that we put on you. really important to say this is our indicative estimates. It's obviously been done using satellite imagery and a computer program. We have not been out in each and every farm. So it's really important that if, for argument's sake, Dave Buckley farmer, my figure is 12%, before I press the submit button, that either yourself or your advisor is reviewing the features that we've mapped and effectively verifying that broadly those features exist on the ground. So in that case, then if for argument's sake we marked a hedgerow up the middle of a parcel, that hedgerow doesn't exist, or it's not the 100 meters that we think it is, it's only 55 meters or whatever, then you or your advisor needs to amend that as part of the BISS application. But where a farmer is over 10%, that counts as 2 actions, and where they're over 7 but not over 10, it counts as 1 of their 2 actions. Important point just to make here is, particularly for many farmers, we know we've probably 85%, give or take, farmers that are going to be over 10% space for nature. The important thing is to review them before you submit, and then to give a bit of comfort, so to speak, to people that if a farmer is at, for argument's sake, 15% space for nature, and if either as a result of on the spot inspection we do or an admin inspection we do, they fall from 15 to 14 or 13% for argument's sake, that's no issue for the farmer once they still deliver more than 10%. Okay, Billy, if you wouldn't mind moving on to the second slide there, please, or the next slide. So agricultural practice 2. So this is the second. This is the second of the agricultural practice, extensive livestock production. So the commitment here for a farmer that's coming in here is they must meet a minimum stocking rate to 0.1 that Mary spoke about. So that's a yaw to the hectare. So they must meet 0.1. But if they're between 0.1 and 1.2, that's an enhanced option. That'll count as 2 actions. If they're between 0.1 and 1.4, that can count as 1 of the 2 actions. So if they're between 0.1 and 1.4, counts as 1 action. Between 0.1 and 1.2, counts as 2 actions. A farmer can use their previous year's stocking rate, so in this case their 2022 stocking rate if they so wish, or alternatively they can use the current year's stocking rate. But in which case, if they do, it means we will not be in a position to process that farmer's payment until February or March of 24, because obviously we have to wait for the full year to determine that the farmer has met their commitments. There are a couple of important points here. The first one is probably an important point. So for a farmer to see this action as part of their Ecoscheme application, they must have greater than 50% grassland. So it can't be a case that, for argument's sake, if I'm a farmer and I have 100 hectares, 99 hectares in arable and 1 hectare of grass, that I can come into this action and won't. I must have more than 50% grassland. Okay, Billy, please move on. Okay, so agricultural practice 3 is the limiting chemical nitrogen usage. So in this case, this is where the farmer is being paid, or the commitment is to limit their chemical nitrogen usage based on particular bands. So there are 5 bands based on their 2022 stocking rate. So if you're less than 90 kilograms of organic nitrogen, you are committing to being limited to less than 73 kilograms of chemical nitrogen in 23, and there are 5 bands for a farmer to choose from. So importantly, this action is clearly not available to organic farmers, because obviously as an organic farmer you are already precluded from using chemical nitrogen, so you won't see this. Equally so, if the herd has more than, or the particular herd number has more than 50% forestry or 50% combinage, or a combination of those, you won't see this action either. And the farmer, you must select the band, and then you must keep receipts in the event that there's an on-the-spot inspection. So that's agricultural practice 3. Okay, Billy, so moving on to agricultural practice 4. So this is planting of native trees and hedgerows. So the commitment here is a minimum planting rate of 3 native trees or 1 metre of hedgerow per eligible hectare. So that's the standard option. So if, for argument's sake, for simple maths, if you had 100 hectares of ground, your commitment here is to plant 3 native trees or 300 trees per hectare. It's not a requirement that you plant 3 on each and every hectare. It's just a requirement that you meet 300 trees. You can decide where best to plant them, all things being equal. I'll go through in a moment. Or alternatively, if you don't want to do the 3 native trees per hectare, you can do 1 metre of hedgerow per eligible hectare. So go again, if I had 100 hectares, then in this case, I would plant 100 metres of hedgerow somewhere within my holding. If I want to double up that action for it to count as 2 actions, so the enhanced action, I must do twice that. So in this case, if I had 100 hectares, I would have to do 6 native trees per hectare or 600 trees, or to do 2 metres of hedgerow, in this case, 200 metres of hedgerow, or I can do a combination of those. So I can do 3 native trees and 1 metre of hedgerow per hectare. So there's a couple of thresholds here too. So If the herd has 100% Natura, 100% commonage or 100% forestry, they're obviously not going to see this action because it's not an action they can physically carry out. You must keep receipts where you carry out this, and the trees or hedges that you commit to plant in this, you can plant them anytime from the 1st of October 22 to the 30th of September 23. So it could be the case that you have planted the trees or hedges since last back end. They're perfectly eligible to be in this scheme up to the trees that you plant or the hedges to the 30th of September 2023. Important point to make: if you commit to doing this action in eco schemes, you're obviously getting paid in eco schemes for it. You're going to get paid in 23, all things being equal. So those trees or hedges that you plant cannot contribute to your space for nature in this year, but they can contribute in subsequent years because we're not paying you in subsequent years. But where you do commit to the trees or the hedges, you must maintain them for the duration of the cap period. Okay, Billy, moving on to agricultural practice 5. So this is the use of a GPS controlled spreader or sprayer. So in this case, you're committing to applying all your chemical fertilizer, whether it's your compound or in some cases arable farmers would be using liquid nitrogen, and or where you're using a sprayer, all your plant protection products going out through a GPS controlled spreader or sprayer. So the important point is this is not a GPS unit in the tractor. This is a GPS unit on the physical spreader or sprayer itself. It can be your own machine if you happen to have one, or it can be a contractor service. So there's a minimum amount. That must be applied that I'll come to in a moment. So the practice is not available to herds once again with greater than 50% commonage or 50% forestry or a combination thereof. Organic farmers can commit to this action to so wish, assuming of course they obviously have to spread organic material. They cannot obviously spread chemical fertilizer or chemical plant protection products. If you're coming into this action and you're doing the GPS sprayers, you must have greater than 50% arable land to be eligible for that. If you're a farmer yourself and you're doing it, as in you have your own machine, you must be a trained professional user, and then you must also keep receipts for on-the-spot inspections. Okay, Billy, just moving on to agricultural practice 6. So this is soil sample and appropriate liming. So what the farmer in committing to this action in eco, if they wish to choose it, is they're carrying out soil sampling on all their eligible hectares. So and applying lime where that is required. So it's only available if you commit to this in 23, you will not see it again for eco for another 3 years, because obviously we don't want people just taking samples purely and simply to meet the requirement of it. So it's not open to derogation farmers. You must take one side sample for every 3 hectares. You must keep receipts for on-the-spot inspections, and where you have a liming requirement, you must spread at least 1/3 of that lime in the first year. But alternatively, if the advice allows, you can equally so you can spread it all. If you obviously don't have a liming requirement, well then there's no requirement to spread the lime. And a bit like I said a moment ago for the trees, in this case, any soil samples taken since the 16th of September 2022 are perfectly eligible for the eco scheme. Okay, Billy, just moving on to agricultural practice 7. So agricultural practice 7 and 8. So 7 is planting of a break crop. So in this, the farmer is committing to planting a break crop, either beans, peas, oilseed rape, or oats, or any combination of those on at least 20% of their arable area. So once again, in terms of some of the thresholds, so you must have greater than 50% arable land in the first case to see this action, and you're committing to sowing down 20% of your arable land to any one or combination of those 4 break crops that are listed. The break crop can have been planted anytime between the 1st of October 2022 and up to the 15th of July 2023. And once again, you must keep receipts in the event that you commit to this action. And then the very last agricultural practice is agricultural practice 8. So this is sowing a multi-species sward. So in this action, the farmer's committing to sowing down at least 7% of their eligible hectares in the year to select this action. So once again, just for simple maths, so if you have 100 hectares of ground, you're committing to sowing down 7 hectares of ground in the year that you select this action. If you come along and you select the action again in 2024, you're sowing another 7 hectares of ground. And I fully accept 100 hectares is a big hole, and I'm only picking that just for simple maths for myself. So the practice is not available to herds then with greater than 90% forestry, greater than 90% commonage, or a combination thereof, because they physically wouldn't be able to carry it out. And if you commit to it, you must maintain the multi-species sward for at least 3 years. Important point, particularly in terms of your BISS application now, is where you're committing to it, whether yourself or your advisor, you must declare them. There's a particular crop usage, so it's multi-species MSS Ecoscheme, or in the case of permanent pasture, MSS Ecoscheme. So the multi-species board must be planted between the 1st of October 2022 and the 15th of July 2023, exactly the same as the planting a break crop. Okay, Billy, just move on to the next slide there, please. So this is the very last slide. So just in summary, so apply on, obviously most importantly, apply online at the same time as BISS and annually thereafter. Participation is voluntary, so while we can't force anyone to do it, we fully expect that given that Ecoschemes contributes 25% of the envelope here, just 297 million of this, many farmers will want to obviously apply for this. It's an important income source. Payment on eligible hectares, it's not linked to entitlements. So back to my example again, if I have 10 hectares of ground with no entitlements, I'm perfectly entitled to come into Ecoschemes, do my 2 ag practices, and all things being equal, I'm going to receive my payment. There's a list of 8 agricultural practices that I've just went through, and you must select 2 practices and complete them manually. And the greatest uptake will be in AP1 space for nature, because we know from the indicative estimates that somewhere around 80 to 85% of farmers are probably going to draw the biggest amount of their eco money from AP1. So I'll hand over to Thomas now. Thanks, everyone.